Hello, everyone, and welcome to all of you present here for this session. My name is Dhruv. I'm one of the strategy mentors at GMAT, and today I have with me Ruthvik, who recently scored a phenomenal 745. That's 100th percentile on the GMAT Focus Edition. Before we dive in, let me give you all a quick snapshot of his journey. Ruthvik started at a 655 and finished at a 745. That's a 90-point improvement overall. To break that down section wise, his verbal moved from an 80 to an 85, which is a 5-point improvement. His quant went from a Q85 to a Q88. And his data insights, the real hero of his score and the real hero of his journey, it jumped from an 82, which honestly is a very decent score, but it went all the way to an 88. That's a 6-point massive improvement in a section most people don't give enough dedicated attention to. So Ruthvik is here, and it's morning out there where he is currently in the US, and he's here to really share all the bits of his journey with all of you here who have tuned in to really gain some insights out of what did Ruthvik do in his journey that helped him reach where he finally did. So Ruthvik, thank you so much for joining in at this time there, and welcome to this session. How are you, and how's everything after the 745?
Thank you, Dhruv. Good to be here with you all. It's been going good. I moved on to the next phase of the applications peacefully after done with the exam. So it feels good here.
Right, right. Of course. I mean, 745, 100 percentile. The next step is, of course, and understandably, the applications. Of course,
Mhm.
we will discuss a bit about that as well a little later in the session. But I would like to start with a cliched question because
Mhm.
many people who've tuned in here right now, they would want to know this, right?
Mhm.
How does it feel when you see a 745 pop up right in front of your screen after you've taken the test? Right? What is the first thing that comes to your mind? How does it feel?
It feels very good, Dhruv. First thing is, since it was on the second attempt, the main feeling is you don't have to take it one more time or prolong the journey anymore. So it's finally relieving to put this exam behind and think about the next steps.
Understood. Understood. So now that we've understood, what that feels like, it could be relief for some people, it could be joy for some people. Now we know what it was for you. Uh,
Mhm.
I think it's time that we delve quickly into your journey section wise, because there must be so many people out here wanting to know so many things. There must be so many problems that they are facing right now, which
Mhm.
you would have faced and you already have an answer to. So, are
Mhm.
you ready? Let us begin.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, I want to start with the data insight section, right?
Okay.
A section where most, which is feared by most people because they believe it is the most difficult section out there, and also the previous edition did not have it. So this edition has it. So this is something new. Although it's been 3 years now, so it's not new anymore. But this is one monster that people have in their heads, right? And for you, the same section ended up being the section where you gained the most from
Mm-hmm.
82 to an 88. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, that's a jump most people don't pull off, right? So, walk me through what actually happened there. And you use EGMAT majorly. So, I want to understand what stood out for you in terms of the content and the coursework that was there for you to leverage on the EGMAT portal.
Sure. So EGMAT was probably the only platform where I could find the dedicated question set for data insights, especially section split that has the section split. So because there were few sections that I was good at and there were few that I wasn't. MSR was something I needed a drastic improvement. So I wanted to do that sectional practice instead of doing the 20 question set always because I wanted to target section wise and then bring the overall score up. So that was the first thing that pointed me to EGMAT, and that did help quite a bit to push section wise scores up. And you know uh, there are multiple types of questions within the section as well. Like I found you have verbal, the scholaranium, and you have the general thing. So it was the vast question set, which was quite different from the verbal, and quant was very helpful in doing targeted practice. And that the first reflection that I saw of this advantage was in improvement of the time. Before accuracy, the time went on as I kept on doing section wise practice and then overall di wise practice without touching verbal and quant completely. It helped reduce the time per question, and which gave me the confidence in the first step, and then as a second step it helped me improve the accuracy.
Understood. Understood. I have a follow-up question though.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm sure everybody who's watching us right now also knows this, and that data insights usually carries questions from both the verbal and the quant background,
Mhm.
right? So, how helpful was it to see on the eGMAT platform that the verbal and the quant concepts and the skills needed to solve those kind of questions were already bifurcated? How did that really help you learn those DI specific skills better and internalize them?
Yeah. So even though the foundation for di is a mix of verbal and quant, but the challenge of scoring an 85 plus in each of the sections are quite unique to each. In verbal it's all about timing majorly, and quant I never faced the issue of the timing. It was simply an accuracy issue whenever something went wrong. But for di it was a mix of both, and I felt like the time crunch was the highest for di, because you need to do the quant like solving at the same time trying to understand large chunks of information, process large chunks of information like the verbal. So since it was a mix, usually the average time needed for a quant was around, the 2 minutes was sufficient for me. For verbal, it was taking around 2.5, but for DI, it was on the upper side of three, like 3.5. So the biggest challenge was getting the time down. Uh, so that was where this sectional wise practice and targeted practice helped, because when I started with the general di, the overall time was high, but I didn't really have the statistics on what was the section wise time, and where I'm eating the most time. When I started doing this targeted practice, I could see that msr was taking almost 4 minutes per question, and something like graphs was around 2 minutes. So I didn't have to waste my time doing some more practice on graphs, especially with respect to timing, and I jumped right into the MSR question. So these were kind of the nuances that could only be popped up with targeted sectional practice. And as I mentioned before, EG might kind of help me open up these hidden improvements.
Understood. Understood. One very uh, common issue, right,
Mm-hmm.
that many students face with data insights is time management, right? Because you have 20 questions, most of them are time consuming, like you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and the time you have is 45 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I, as a mentor, always tell all my students, and I think I would have told this to you as well, that DI is the most forgiving section, right?
Yeah.
If you ensure that you are giving enough time to all the 20 questions, which
Mm-hmm.
means you're not overspending time on certain questions,
Mm-hmm.
you usually end up on the higher side of the DI score, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when people make around 4 to 5 mistakes, they get a good score of around 83, right?
Okay.
I would like you to help all of such people who have these kind of issues currently
Mm-hmm.
about what was your strategy to manage time well and ensure that you are covering all the 20 questions, and all the 20 questions are getting the kind of attention that they should, to ensure that you score pretty high on DI.
Yeah, I would majorly say a couple points. First thing is, after identifying the section wise, problems that each person have them, we'll have all unique challenges based on our background. For me personally, I think we should compromise at some point. As I mentioned about MSR before, I could get an MSR average time to around 2.5 to 3 minutes, and I didn't punish me further to strictly get it to 2 minutes, because that was taking too much more time, and I had to get back to my verbal quant preparation and also focus on other DI section types. So I think that kind of planning is kind of crucial, where you cannot get every type of question to the required 2 minutes or 2 minutes 10 seconds. So you'll have some strengths along with some weaknesses. So for example, some graphs questions or some two-part analysis questions, sometimes I was able to solve them within 1.5 minutes. So the exam buys you some time from your strength kind of questions, which you can use in excess for your weakness kind of questions. So that was the first thing, where we need not stress too much to score everything, like not track time after every question and make sure it is under 2 minutes. As a bulk, for every 5 questions or 8 questions, you can check the time and make sure you are around the horizon. That was the first thing. Second thing was basically, letting go of questions was something, as you mentioned, how do we make sure we pay enough attention to all the 20 questions. That was majorly because once you see a question, sometimes you realize DI, you have to accept that it's not like VA or quant, where you can pay full attention to all the 20 questions. That might not be possible for majority of the people, and that's not individualistic. That's just how the section is built out. Sometimes it's built out to make tough choices rather than showing your analytical skills or accuracy. So once you see a questions, there is a few questions, there is a high chance you realize this is not going to be done within even 4 minutes. This is going to take longer than that. Some things have layered calculations that would take around 4 to 5 minutes. So I learned to recognize those questions and let go of them so that I can dedicate the time for other questions. This overall improved my accuracy, because those questions, there is a high chance of getting them wrong, because in those layered calculations there is a high chance you miss them somewhere. So putting the effort and time to unnecessarily do all those and still get them wrong also gives you the time pressure to get other questions wrong, which you can actually do it. But letting this go, I was able to get everything right that I really can get right, and that improved the accuracy. And if there is really time, I could get back to this question and do this as well without any time pressure, which actually helped me tough questions, or if helped me solve even tough questions.
Understood. Understood. Thank you for that. Let us speak and discuss a bit about Quant, right? You
Wow.
started Quant at a strong 85, right? That's a
Mhm.
good place to be in. It's a decent place to be. And then you pushed it further from there to an 88, which is actually genuinely harder than climbing, from a low score, right?
Mhm.
Because the scope for improvement is very less, and that's where diagnosing those specific areas that need improvement is the key, right?
Mhm.
So I want to understand from you what exactly from the eGMAT portal helped you diagnose those few gaps, and how did you then go on to close those gaps that you identified to score a kind of a close to a perfect Q90. Q88 is close to a Q90. So how did you go about that?
Yeah, so basically, I think the challenge with Quant is different compared to DI. I never had a timing issue with Quant, but the problem was with a certain kind of questions. But if you take a particular kind of question, it doesn't appear every time in every test. So initially, when I was just choosing 20 questions and doing them, I was missing some, I was getting some. I never really had the chance of analysis, strong identification of these are the types of questions where I'm going wrong. So that's where EGMAT kind of helped me, where I was able to once, because each question had its specific section type highlighted, I was able to specifically bookmark what kind of questions are pulling me back, where my accuracy is around just 50 to 70%. And then I was able to do targeted practice on those particular types of questions from Scholaranium as well, apart from the regular portal. And this kind of helped me push those individual category scores higher, which showed eventually in the overall score, quant score as well. And one more point is basically, I think the GMAT mocks or the sectional mocks, quant mocks, or the individual questions, the accuracy and the overall score are pretty reflective of the actual test, the difficulty level and everything. So the 88 or 90, I was scoring the 88 to 90 region towards the last 1 month of my practice, and that clearly reflected in the exam. So I think if we can specifically pinpoint and do targeted improvement in quant as well, using uh, the specific resources like section wise questions, the score is pretty reflective of the real test.
Understood. Understood. Let us touch upon verbal a little bit because that's also a place where you did improve by 5 points,
Mm-hmm.
right? So verbal moved from an 80 to an 85. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of people treat CR and RC as one verbal skill, right? But I know, because we were working closely, I know that you didn't. You treated both of them separately, and like both of them needed separate skills. So I want to understand what was the actual shift in how you approached each CR and RC. Let's speak about CR first, and then we can touch upon RC.
Yeah, makes sense. I think for CR, you need to understand the question and what it is trying to ask. But RC is quite different in that aspect, because RC, you need to do a quick read and not uh, stress about understanding each and every detail of the passage. But in CR, I think we have to understand because nothing is worded in a straightforward manner in CR. But in RC, for the most part, it does. For CR, there is a trick or a different type of question where it might seem like expecting one kind of answer, but it's expecting something else. To understand those patterns, I think extensive practice is the one that helps you mark those and understand and process those patterns differently. You cannot have the same approach for all those different types of patterns. And the major thing that helped is the pre-thinking, which this kind of structured logical approach wasn't there with me before. But after going through the long 1 hour videos about targeting CR or RC specifically, given by Rajat Joshi and others, it did quite help with learning these tricks with verbal, which wasn't the case with other two sections. The verbal needed that, especially because I'm not a native speaker and I'm from India. These tricks are the ones that help me push my score higher. Pre-thinking is a very big advantage or help, because when you pre-think, you cannot pre-think every question the same way. So when I marked those patterns, for each pattern I had a specific pre-thinking approach as well, what the option might be. And one more advantage of pre-thinking is not falling for the trap choices. Out of the 4 to 5 answer choices, there are a couple that, at least a couple, that might seem like the right answer, that talk about information that is very close or relevant to what the question might be asking, but isn't exactly what it is asking. So to understand those, pre-thinking helped me visualize like what the answer might look like, which clearly helped me eliminate those traps and reduce my focus onto the correct answer. Second thing was basically as I mentioned, for each pattern you need to identify the separate approach, and to identify patterns, extensive practice is what was needed. So again, the Scholaranium and section wise practices, where I could take a set of 10 CR questions instead of worrying about the timing. That really helped me, because I couldn't figure out these patterns and timing at the same time. So initially I started with unlimited time practice, where I was just doing 10 questions, which might not be reflective of the entire test, but it helped me solve those patterns problem and content related problems. Once I saw improvements in those, then I slowly increased it to 15 and then 20, and then brought in timed practice. So this kind of step by step practice was only possible because of the resources available on GMAT, the section wise and the topic wise, and timed versus untimed. So this was the overall process which helped me push CR score higher.
Understood. Understood. Uh, when we talk about mocks, okay, this is something that I tell a lot of my students, right? It's not the number of mocks you take,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because many people, when they speak with me for the first time, they share their plans and they are like, I plan to take one mock every 2 days or one mock every week, and I tell them that it's not the number of mocks you take, it's what you do in between them that actually moves the score, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would add trackability to that too, because any journey, right, whether it's the GMAT prep journey or a simple weight loss journey, right,
Mm-hmm.
it only really works when it is being measured, it is
Mm-hmm.
being tracked.
Mm-hmm.
I want to understand how did that play out for you, right? Two things: the process between two mocks, because you were actually scoring 735, 745 on every mock, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the process between two mocks and how you use the data to get an honest read on where you actually stood.
Yeah, so I think maintaining an error log and specifically highlighting the repetitive sections or repetitive types where you are going wrong again and again, that's the key part in analysis that you have to do between mocks. I usually had at least 2 to 3 days gap between the mocks because I needed the time for this kind of analysis. And in terms of improvement, as I said, like initially when I fixed my problems in section wise, all that strategy and thinking was going away under time pressure when I was doing the total mock back again. So once I had the tools and strategies which I can use to, which I surely know that I can use to, improve my section wise things. Somehow it wasn't reflecting on the overall final score. So to map what's the difference, how to get rid of the time pressure, and deciding on the order of the you know exam, the quant, verbal, DI as well. These kind of nuances you could only figure out in doing the overall mocks. uh, First the sectional marks, then the overall marks. So this is the kind of analysis that I did between test to test. I initially did sectional marks where I was able to bring down the time pressure and try to have the same performance that I had in 10 question set. I try to increase it to the 20 question set in the sectional marks. And then once I had the sectional mark scores also around the horizon, like whatever needed for each section, then I went for overall marks, and I then tried different patterns, different uh, orders of the sections, and then finally zeroed in on something that worked for me. So the kind of improvement practice that you need for improvement within sections or within certain question types is very different from what you have to do for the overall section or overall mock. Yeah.
Understood. Okay. And when I speak about trackability, there's a feature called skill data analytics on the portal. I want to understand how are you leveraging that to ensure that you are identifying those little gaps, let's say in a particular topic or in a particular block, to
Mhm.
really fix them, with the targeted practice that you've been mentioning about repeatedly on this particular discussion. So, how did you leverage the data analytics part on the portal?
Yeah, that was pretty helpful. As I said, certain kind of questions you do well, irrespective of the time pressure, but certain you might be strong, but might go wrong under the time pressure. So to understand these patterns, for example, MSR or RC kind of questions, I could do well in the section wise practice and limited set of questions practice. But when it came to the overall three section entire mock, I was again going back to my old accuracy rate or feeling the time pressure. So again, I needed that inputs where I could specifically pinpoint the exact areas of improvement and this analytics data was coming into play there. I could clearly see the section wise dip, and as you can see there is timing pointers as well, statistics as well. So under time pressure, what are the specific question types that I am taking more time for? RC, whenever I was feeling time pressure, the kind of time I was taking was significantly higher compared to any other kind of question in other sections or verbal as well. So the problem is I was trying to translate that. I was unable to translate that pressure into strategic thinking. I was reading again and again the same thing under time pressure, just unintentionally. So these kind of patterns and behavioral issues can only be found out because of those analytical things, where I could see the time going back up again and accuracy falling down. So I could do go back to targeted practice again, and come back with more confidence to get rid of this time fatigue and everything.
Understood. Understood. Uh, I can see many comments coming in. Just a couple of more questions, and Ruthvik will answer all your queries, guys. Thank you for your patience. Ruthvik, coming back to another question that I have, right? Having good quality mocks,
Yeah.
right, is also extremely essential to help you understand where you currently stand, right? And when I was going through your account, I could see that you were literally scoring 735 and 745 on the mocks on the platform as well. So I want to understand from you, uh, how representative did you find these mocks, and uh, you know on the test, how did you feel about the quality of questions compared to what you did on the mocks, and how close were the mocks compared to the official test?
There, my official score is pretty reflective of uh, uh, the answer I'm going to give. I was scoring around 735 to 755 in my mocks, and my original actual official test score is 745. So that itself speaks for it a lot. Uh, and that was helpful, as I mentioned, during Quant as well. It was giving me confidence during my practice as well, where I could see real improvement and getting closer to the actual test marks. When I did some questions from the GMAT mocks and then did a couple mocks from the OG, I was scoring higher in OG, but in the actual official test, I ended up scoring a score that is more closer to GMAT mocks. So having a score that is reflective is very important, because sometimes if you score higher than where you actually are, you might feel complacent, or if you are actually lower, it might hurt your confidence. So it's actually very emotionally very important, mentally, to kind of pinpoint you exactly where you are, so that you can take up the strategies that exactly work for that particular kind of score. Because if you're at 655, the kind of practice or improvement strategies you have to follow are very different from if you're already at around 705 and you need those 30-40 points improvement to get to that 100 percentile. And
Yeah,
mentoring was pretty helpful as well specifically along this journey, because however much you try, you cannot find uh, every loophole of yours. Sure, we have the analytics and everything, but reading the patterns is a different skill set. So initially I had all those analytics, and honestly they were a little too much in the beginning, because I wasn't able to convert those analytics into something useful. That's where the mentorship kind of lent me a hand and guided me through how to read through those analytics and understand the gaps and specifically do the targeted practice.
understood. Understood. Thank you for that. Uh, Rutvik, look,
Hmm.
uh, nervousness and test day anxiety is again a very common emotion, right? Because when you worked hard for something, when something matters to you a lot, when you've dreamt about something, and when the final day comes, it does lead to some nerves and
Hmm.
anxiety. And I have seen that there are many people who score above 700s on mocks, right? Because they have the ability, they've developed all the skills. They do so well on cementing quizzes, on sectional mocks on the portal, right?
Hmm.
But come the test day, they are not able to handle the nerves,
Hmm.
and the score collapses. I want to understand from you about the test day itself, or let's say a couple of days before the test day. How did you manage the nerves, and stay focused when it actually mattered?
Yeah. So basically, as I mentioned, as you transition from questions or individual sectional marks to the overall marks, there are a certain kind of qualities you have to develop over the journey, which help you avoid those extra stress situations. For example, letting go of questions is one thing I already mentioned, where especially for DI or a certain verbal questions, because verbal has the highest number of questions, so you get the least amount of time per question. It's very important to understand and let go of a particular question so that you don't miss out on something that you can actually perform better. These kind of tricky questions, there is a high chance even if you put the required time and even much more than that, you can still go wrong. So when the probability of accuracy is low, it's better to let go of it within a minute and use that extra minute to do well on something else where you can do, and you can always get back. And the three edit, knowing the three edit rule before and mentally preparing yourself to practice the three edit rule during the actual mocks, GMAT mocks, that was pretty helpful, because usually I don't think you can have more than five extremely that throw you a ball during the exam, the hard tricky questions that throw you a ball. So out of those five, you one or two, you could go to the closest guess. So the knowing that you can get back to three questions within each section actually gave me that confidence to let go of questions. And honestly, I never really bookmarked even those three. It was usually two questions, or in rare cases it was going to three questions. So it was good enough for me to build that confidence. And this pattern or behavioral confidence, I could only build it through mock practice as part of the EGMAT platform. And timing, however many strategies you build, or however good you become, it could all shatter under time pressure. That was one of the
Yeah.
points that was highlighted by the mentor. The strategies that I discussed or the improvements that I showed in the sectional mocks were suddenly gone, and I was back to square one around a month before, even a month, around 35 days before the test. That was when you understand that it's not behavioral problem, it's just a problem of translation from 20 questions, because you have a full focus on 20 question set and then you're relaxed. But to translate that focus into a continuous 2.5 hour performance and 60 plus questions performance, that's where the key mock practice comes in. So instead of stressing out, I think, as I said before as well, don't check the time and try to punish yourself to be within 2 minutes for every question. It's impossible. Some questions you will just finish within one and a half, and some questions you have to take the 3+ minutes. But never go
Correct.
beyond 3 to 3.5, because that will definitely take away a lot of unnecessary time from the other questions. But checking time every 5 to 8 questions, depending that a specific number as well, you can find the number that's comfortable for your individual style of practice during the sectional marks and everything. That helps you not stress, because 5 to 8 questions gives an overall idea. You do less in some, you do more in some. So whether you're balancing it quite well or not is something you can easily find within by checking time in those strict intervals.
Understood. Understood. Now, the last question. Everyone watching us till here, thank you so much for being here. As soon as the last question is answered, we will open the forum and take up all your comments, where Ruthvik will try and answer the questions that you've asked. So, thank you
Mm-hmm.
for your patience once again. So, last question from me, Ruthvik. If you
Mm-hmm.
had to compress this entire, journey
Mm-hmm.
into one piece of advice for starting today, someone
Mm-hmm.
starting today, what
Mm-hmm.
would it be?
Targeted practice and time improvement. So basically, identifying your specific issues. Don't try to follow the playbook of somebody else. You can try to understand how they are thinking and how they are going about fixing their own, drawbacks, but copy pasting those exact strategies wouldn't work for everybody. So try to pinpoint the exact areas of problem that you have specifically given the background. Verbal might be strong for some, quant might be strong for others. So find those and leverage the EGMAT platforms topic wise questions first to begin with within Scholar ANM and the regular portal as well, to improve those topic wise scores. And then eventually there are two problems for whatever you do: getting the time down, improving the accuracy. So once you have these two set for every topic, then you move on to the next layer of section wise practice for all the three sections. So once you could translate this to the 20 question set of targeted practice, then as I mentioned, it comes to the overall mock, where the key is to not stress, learn how to let go of identification is more important. Sometimes you over identify. Initially when I was trying to identify, I was letting go of more than I can. So finding that balance where something is truly time consuming is can only be achieved through practice. So that letting go of thing is so, and time, not stressing under time, are the two keys that you have to learn from translation from sectional marks to overall full marks. So I would say find your own path, find your own problems, find your specific solutions. But the tools are something I can advise on from EGMAT, this targeted practice, and then the overall mocks. And as you mentioned, the analytics, which help you along the journey to exactly pinpoint where your problematic areas are.
Understood. Thank you so much for answering all my questions, Ruthvik. Uh, I wish I could have asked more, but I also need to ensure that I'm leaving the platform open for all these viewers who are so enthusiastically posting so many comments and questions. I
Mhm.
will pick up a few and put them for you, and you can answer them. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Uh, yeah, I actually have found an interesting one. Shubham, I would like you to display that one. Right? It says, was there a time at which you felt behind your initial study schedule, and how did you build the momentum again at that particular point?
Yeah, there are such times, but I didn't stress myself too much, because stressing about we are getting closer to a targeted uh, window of when we want to take the test. It only y- hampers your chances of focusing on the strategies. So don't stress too much about the schedule. Usually what happens is the initial ladder is hard to climb, and the last 1 month, as I said, even 35 days before the test, I was still scoring around 700 for my mocks, EGMAT mocks, which was the after 6 months of my test, first test, which was around that same score, 695 to 705. So I felt like all these 6 months I did nothing, which is not actually true. So don't stress too much about the time or getting closer to the test date. One thing that helped me is not booking the test date until I felt 90+% confident, or I could see most of my problematic areas being solved. That helped me reduce stress. But even if you have a booked test date, please realize that the initial ladder is hard to climb, and you will have escalated improvement over the last 1 month. So once I was able to identify the exact issues between sectional marks and full marks, within a week, as I did go from 700 to 735. So don't worry about timing too much or getting closer to the date.
All right. I hope that answers your question. The next question I see is, what are the steps you need to take before that starts happening? I think the context is, Ruthvik, that you mentioned, when the process starts becoming intuitive and, it becomes muscle memory. So the question is around that context. So what are the steps you need to take before that starts happening? Is it the sheer volume of questions, something that you should deliberately practice, for example, pre-thinking or any other process?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the pre-thinking or the specific behavioral issues or individualistic issues that you might have with respect to each section, those have to be solved within the section wise practice or topic wise practice. But only once you are confident that all those behavioral things are solved, you could confidently expect this kind of it happens naturally. I cannot clearly pinpoint like when it exactly happens or how it exactly happens, but it can only happen once all your foundational issues are fixed. For me, since all my foundational issues, behavioral issues, are fixed within the sectional marks, I was able to get to the full mark improvement within that 1 week. But if you're unable to do that, then I suggest there is something with the problem with the foundation. I suggest you go back to the analytics and understand and go back to targeted practice. I had to do that a couple of times. There is no it's not wrong to go back to targeted practice again. It might, sometimes it might feel hard. Oh, I have spent a couple months or 3 months, I've come to the section full mock level, and I feel like I have to go back to targeted practice. That's something the GMAT test is actually testing. Not giving up and perseverance, the ability to build confidence to go back and with sheer determination, uh, trying to climb back up is these are the qualities that inherently the test GMAT test is testing you on, rather than simple analytical or topic wise things. So it's definitely not the sheer volume of questions at that point. If you want to see that natural improvement, it's post fixing the foundational issues. It's just learning to not stress and translate the 20 question performance to 60 plus questions performance. Again, choosing an order that works specifically for you is another important step that helped me go to that point where you can manage stress. For example, verbal was something I put it to the end because doing verbal in the beginning was kind of stressing me out. So those kind of things you have to pinpoint and fix, and then the natural improvement happens.
Understood. The next question is, what strategy worked best for you in reading comprehension, especially for dense or unfamiliar passages? This is an interesting one.
Yeah, so as I talked before about letting go of particular questions within RC, letting go of certain sentences and not stressing too much about understanding each and every tiny detail of the passage was the key. It was very hard to develop for me because I was tuned to read to understand every bit. Usually in daily life, when you read a book or something, you try to understand most of the thing. But that's not how RC works. Sometimes you'll have a long passage, but you have to understand that you will have at max four questions for that given passage. Usually it's around three, and sometimes it can go up to four. So definitely they wouldn't be asking about each and every sentence. They can at most ask about four sentences or a mix of 6 to 7 sentences out of those that long passage, which the exact sentences that matter, you don't know it beforehand. So the key is to just skim through the passage and building an overall mental map. That was something, again, a tip that I picked up from these 1 hour sessions done recorded on EGMAT. And I was able to hone the that specific skill through practice. Time untimed practice within, I was just taking a couple medium, couple hard, and doing untimed practice in Scholaranium. Then I came up to sectional tests, RC specific sectional tests, which randomly gave me 2 to 3 passages and timed me. So this kind of step by step practice kind of helped me build perfect that mental building that mental map. Once you have that mental map, again, don't overwrite. Once you build that mental map, it's good to translate that into a written form so that you don't forget when you come back to questions. But it's also crucial to not overdo it. Initially, I was building the mental map correctly, but I was overwriting the details, which was again eating 30 plus seconds, which is very crucial for RC. If you are wasting 30 seconds, that's essentially a question gone. in RC, because you have to use the rest 1.5 minute to figure out a question, and you usually don't have the type of time left in RC. RC is where you will find the most time challenging problems. So yeah, when just go through it, whether don't forget, we'll all have strengths and weaknesses. I hate history passages, but keeping those personal interests aside is very key. I learned to read a science passage and history passage with the same interest and with the same conviction. That's very key, because you if you like science passages and if you do well and you show that extra interest, that's going to hurt you when you come back to history passage, because you never know what passages you're going to get. So putting your personal reading interests aside and just forget about the topic and looking at the passage as a blind compilation of multiple passages, multiple paragraphs, is the key to begin with, like being agnostic, topic agnostic. And once that's achieved, then learning this process through targeted practice of building a mental map will really help you. Once you have the mental map and you know what the question is about, you can easily go back and have those extra details that you just skim through in the initial read. So this is what I followed.
Understood. The next question for you, Ruthvik, is: Hey, Ruthvik, how was the difficulty compared with the mocks you took? I think he's talking about difficulty level of EGMAT mocks compared to the official test. And how many questions can you get wrong on each section to get a score like yours, section wise?
Um to answer the first question, I think EGMAT mocks were more closer to my actual score. The OG mocks, I think 3 to 6 are also closer, but I think practice test, the OG Mock 1 and OG Mock 2 give you a little high score than where you actually are. So so keep that in mind. I was scoring 765, 775 in those 1 and 2, which was not completely reflective of my actual score. But once you get to 3, 4, 5, 6, it's again closer to your actual test score, just like EGMAT mocks. EGMAT mocks, all the sectional versus the full mocks, they're pretty reflective of the actual test. The section wise, how many you can get wrong, that actually changes pretty much. I would say in math, every question is at 10 point. I lost 2 questions and I lost 20 points. So I think at least the first 3 to 4, you would lose around 10 points. After that, it might go even higher. If you use if you get 5 questions wrong in quant, probably it's more than a 50-point deduction. Quant punishes you more. So it's important to get as less questions wrong as possible on quant. DI is the most forgiving. You could get 4 wrong and still get a pretty good 85 plus score, like 87, 88. Even if you get 5 wrong, you would score 86, 87. So uh, DI, I did get 2 questions wrong on the actual test as well, but that might not work every time. In my practice, I was getting around 3 usually. So if you want an 85 plus score, I would say 4 to 5 is the bandwidth or a window where you have to keep your error count. I would say 4, but sometimes you can go up to 5 depending on the difficulty. Same with verbal. I think you could get around 3 to 4 wrong to score above 86, 86 and 86 plus. So around 7 to 8 questions overall in the overall test will help you be around 100th percentile. 3 each on DI and verbal, and 1 to 2 on quant. You can get one less wrong in quant and try to take advantage of it in DI, where you usually get more questions wrong. So, but keeping the overall error count to around 8 would help you be in that 100 percentile, 735 to 755.
All right, thank you for that. So this question is probably from an EGMAT student because he's used the term cementing. He says passing the cementing is a real challenge. Getting stuck is frustrating at that point. What should be the most optimal mindset one should keep in that moment?
Cementing quiz. There is no pass or fail. Like basically, don't, there is a time where you can start focusing on the actual score or something, but try to uh, blindly just look at analytical statistics. And if you have a mentor, take the mentor help to get pinpointed to your areas of weaknesses. If you solve these things, score will automatically improve. Don't worry about a particular cementing quiz score. Even towards the last days, there were moments where I was scoring less than expected for the cementing quiz. So since you do tens of cementing quizzes, it's not humanly possible to get your intended score every time. Even though suppose you are at V88, or for verbal if you are around 87, 88 region, sometimes you can have an hard cementing thrown at you where you could score 83 or 84, which is totally fine. You will have those ups and downs. So don't let those ups and downs frustrate you or eat you down. uh, just focus on strategies, and once every 4 to 5 cementing quizzes, see the overall pattern. Out of those five, if at least there are three that you're scoring closer to your expected region, that's pretty good enough. That will translate to the real test. You don't have to score on every uh, cementing quiz.
Okay, I hope that answers your question. The next one is, how did you unlearn your earlier CR solving methodology to learn pre-thinking method? So again, a very interesting one.
Targeted practice, as I said, first you start with untimed. As I always say, whatever strategy or this kind of logical gap you're trying to miss, which is not just a translation error by sheer volume of questions or something, start with untimed practice so that you actually give yourself that time to build that skill, and then eventually you can speed up that skill processing. So for CR, basically, I was just treating it like an RC passage. I was reading it the same way, not understanding the double layered thinking that the question usually has. RC is usually straightforward, but CR, it's a little tricky. So to understand those tricks and to develop specific skill set for each of those, practice, back to back practice. Verbal was where I spent most of my time compared to the other two sections, because it needed more practice than the rest. So I would say start with untimed practice. Force yourself to pre-think. Sometimes there might be a question which comes off naturally to you. You might not pre-think, but don't take that. Force yourself to pre-think for every question. Then it becomes a natural habit in that untimed practice, and then you could translate that to time practice, mocks, and full mocks. You're not audible, Dhruv.
Sorry. The next question is, if my mock scores, whether official or third party, are still around 100 points below my target score, would you suggest not to schedule the exam now?
Yeah, I would suggest don't. That would only add on to your stress. uh, I wanted an 100th percentile score, and as I said, 35 days before the test, I still scored a 705. I talked to my mentor, and I was clearly said it's not a behavioral problem or strategy problem, so don't worry about it. It's just a translational problem, and not stressing. As I keep saying, your all your strategies will be shattered under time stress. So finding ways to avoid stressing is a very important way. But if you schedule the time, you are actually increasing your chances of feeling stressed, feeling frustrated during the practice. Those are very crucial to let go of them. So please don't book the test until you're at least 22 or max 50 points within the targeted thing. I actually scored a 735 in mock before scheduling a test.
Understood. Now, because you were talking about time and anxiety, there's a question here. Watching the time running on the screen gives me anxiety to complete, and that's why I almost do not follow the process properly.
Yeah.
How to deal with it?
Not see the time. So as I said, some people feel comfortable watching it every 5 questions. Definitely not less than five. At least you have to give yourself that grace period of 5 questions to go back to seeing the time. But for me, five also wasn't enough, so I was usually using 7 to 8 window. Every 7 questions or 8 questions, especially for verbal, I was splitting into three parts, 23. So I was doing 8, 8, 7. So after every 8 questions, I was checking the time and I was making sure I was within that one third time frame. For quant, I never really had to worry about time. For DI, it was every five questions, 6 questions. I was doing four because timing was a major problem for DI. So you have to force yourself, just like I mentioned for pre-thinking, few things you have to force yourself. They might feel hard in the end, and you might feel like sometimes you're scoring good even without those strategies, but they are temporary improvements. If you are seeking permanent improvements that translate your full score, you have to be harsh about implementing certain strategies. Pre-think, you have to force. Sometimes it might not be required. Just force yourself to pre-think. Similarly, for timing, just don't look at the time until you hit that ninth question or eighth question, whatever you fix it for you. If you feel loose about it, or just give up and go back to seeing the time, you're never gonna achieve that final score. So just being forceful and harsh about not looking at the time, simply, that's how you deal with it.
All right. And everyone, we are nearing the end of the session. So this is the last question before we allow Ruthvik to go and leave us. So, Ruthvik, how many marks did you give? Is there a minimum number that one should aim for? Apart from the six official ones, how did you finalize your section order? Thanks again.
There is no minimum in my opinion. We all have our own minimums. So what? But as Dhruv and I were talking in the beginning, what you do between the mocks is more crucial. If you do that error analysis perfectly, uh, I uh, I was going through some videos of pre-test takers or some old test takers where they were able to get to their targeted score with just 3 mocks in their entire journey, which was not enough for me. I had to do around 10. I did all the six, and I did four from each GMAT. So I had to do around 10, but I did those 10 within the last 1 month. Uh, you could use, there are some websites that are not very reflective of the test, but which you can actually use to practice that time anxiety, stress things, etc. So I use those kind of those kind of mocks during my practice journey, and saved all of my EGMAT and official mocks for the last 30 days, where I can confidently, I was once I had that confidence of performance in sectional mocks, then only I started this using the important EGMAT and OG mocks, because it's very hard to find mocks that are reflective of the real test, and you will lose them. But at the same time, you cannot completely avoid touching mocks. uh, every few weeks you have to do a mock, so that you're in touch and you're in introspection of your overall time stress kind of behavioral patterns. So use unimportant mocks during your regular practice and save your important mocks to the end. And the exact number of mocks varies. I would recommend 5 to 10, but sometimes you might not need those many if you do the error analysis probably. So take those as indications. Do the error analysis, take your first mock, do the error analysis, take the second one. Based on the improvement, you decide on the next set of mocks.
All right. We tried to
Sorry,
take as many questions as we could.
one more thing. He was asking about section order as
Yes.
well. So as I said, it's
Yes.
just trial and error for the most part. I was, since verbal, I would like to debunk one misconception. It's not always right that you have to start with your toughest thing. Verbal was my toughest part, I would say, and because I felt like my focus is on the highest in the beginning of the test, I was starting my test with verbal. But for some reason, it didn't work out, and I realized this pretty late. So uh, trying different orders is very crucial. So even you might have some myths or assumptions about what your order might be. Just put those aside and try different orders. When I changed the order, I could simply, without any error analysis or something, I was able to jump from 705 to 725, a simple 20-point improvement. That was the indication for me that this is the ideal section order for me. I used quant sorry data insights, quant and verbal in the end. So this was something you will feel that you will see sudden improvement with the same skill set. That's when you realize that's the natural sectional order that works for you.
Understood. So, thank you so much, uh, Ruthvik, for doing this. I'm already getting messages thanking us for organizing this, but I think the biggest thanks has to go to you, Ruthvik,
Mm,
because this wouldn't have been possible without you.
yeah.
I alone over here wouldn't have done anything, right? So, thank
Pleasure
you
is all
so much for
mine.
finding out the time.
Thank you, Dhruv. Pleasure is all mine. As I said, videos like this were very helpful when I was practicing, because these kind of tips and strategies. GMAT is not about going back to preschool and learning math or data. It's all these strategies and logics. So sometimes it's very hard to figure it out yourself. So these are the videos that helped me in the journey, and happy to give back when my journey is done. Yeah.
Understood. All right. Thank you so much, Ruthvik, again. There's somebody asking, hi, Dhruv, thanks for organizing this. It was really helpful. Who can I reach out for the EGMAT packages? Okay. So you can simply write to support@egmat.com. Junaid, then the team will reach back to you. Support@egmat.com. Support e-gmat.com, and we will reach out to you. So, yeah, everyone's wishing you good luck, Ruthvik. I'm sure
Thank
you
you.
can also see the comments, right?
I don't see them actually.
You don't see them. Okay, so
Oh,
there are
I can.
people wishing you good luck, and there are people thanking you. And yeah, so thanks a lot. Ruthvik won't keep you here for long. You must have a long day ahead there. It's just morning there. So have a great day. Thank you to everybody who joined in. And we wish you all the best for your GMAT journey. Thank you, Ruthvik. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, all. Bye.
Bye.